call the meeting to order, please. Languages. I'd like to inform the committee that all members have completed the required login tests prior to the meeting, so that's done. Pursuant to the order of reference, Monday, May the 30th, 2022, the committee resumes consideration of Bill C-13, an act to amend the Official Languages Act and to enact the French language's use by private sector undertakings act and to make related amendments to other acts. The committee will have two meetings this morning, 8:45 to 10:45, and then we will follow up at 12:30 to 1500. These two sessions will fulfill the conditions of the motion passed on March the 10th to add 6.5 hours of sitting time to debate the sections and amendments to C-13. Following that, at the next meeting on Tuesday, April 18, and in accordance with the motion adopted on December the 1st, all the remaining amendments will be deemed moved, and I will put forth in succession, without further debate, all the remaining clauses and amendments before the committee, together with each question necessary to dispose of the clause-by-clause consideration of the bill and all questions necessary to report the bill to the House. I'd like to welcome the officials who've been here for quite a while now, Department of Canadian Heritage, Treasury Board Secretariat, and the Department of Justice, who are here to assist the committee on technical matters. For Canadian Heritage, Julie Boyer, Marcel Fallu, and welcome Chantal Terrien, thank you. For the Ministry of Justice, Warren Newman, Karine Adam, and Danielle Cadieux from Treasury Board. Everybody there? We're good? We're used to seeing Mr. Quayle in that corner, but no problem. He's entitled to his holidays. But there seems to be a face missing here. In any case, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that you've received, and it was circulated from the clerk, a notice from Statistics Canada. There was perhaps an error as to the percentage and in the numbers here, 6.1, 6.6. You've seen the letter, so it's a clarification. So, Statistics Canada has contacted the committee on Bill C, on the amendment by Mr. Ashton, adopted on the 7th of February. What it reads now is that Bill C-13 in Section 6 be amended by adding, after line 9 on page 5, the following, and I will quote, "Recovery means, in relation to the demographic weight of French-speaking minorities, the return of demographic weight to all members of these minorities whose first official language spoken is French, to which level, at which it was at the time of the 1971 Statistics Canada census by the population of Canada, that is 6.6% of the population outside of Quebec." Close quotes. Stats Canada also clarified for us, according to the 71 census, the demographic weight of the population in French as first official language was 6.1 and not 6.6. The 6.1 is obtained after distributing multiple languages, which consists of two components, the population with only French as a first official language, and secondly, half of the population with both French and English as their first official language spoken. So that's the adjustment we have to do. We would have to replace, instead of 6.6, must be replaced by 6.1%. So I would like to confirm that we are in agreement with this change as proposed by Stats Canada, so the number would appear as 6.1% to the Ashton. Well, Mr. Chair, I wanted to make sure that this, in fact, corresponds to the intent of the motion. We had requested the real number. We're not specialists, obviously, so I think it's very wise to say yes. I would be quite comfortable with that. Is there unanimous consent? I don't have anything but the blank landing page on my screen here. I don't know who the technicians are in the back there, but I'd like to see who's out there in the virtual world. I want to see the people agree in remote on the platform. Please. The interpreters don't have the screen either. Unanimous consent? No opposition? Okay, thank you. Okay, now, last point I'd like to indicate. The last time we met, I indicated that I'd explore various dates so that we can accelerate the process here, fast-track it during the break weeks even. Madame Legault worked very arduously and proposed the following dates. What I requested was that we do it as a doublets, one right away for each date, not two meetings. So on the 1st of April, we'll go 10 to noon and 1 to 3. The following Thursday, 3rd of April, 13th of April, rather, 10 to 12 again and 1 to 3. So we might be able to complete C13, and before our before our clerk has to come with another version yet, we want to keep her to the end of this process, so we don't want to lose her. So we can discuss this if there's any kind of problems, but I'm quite prepared to accept those, and we could maybe finish in one solid block. Mr. Généreux. Well, congratulations for those efforts, Mr. Chair, to try to get through this so quickly. Writing weeks are not holidays. I am usually working wall-to-wall, as it were. So the second week, I don't know. That's a lot of organization to rework my schedule. It's not in a matter of bad faith on my part, but I really don't think I'll be able to do it. Well, I think a lot of people are in the same boat. We don't often get to work in our writings between January and June. Now we have 2, and we have another in May. Well, by the end of the day, I'd like you to, we're all in the same boat. If you can be replaced for one of these meetings, if we do it in one block per day of 4 hours, that's very efficient. Arduous, but efficient. So we'll take 5 minutes at the end of our day today to rediscuss this for the dates. If you can be replaced, let's do so, because we're doing great work right now, and we can really fast-track this program as quickly as possible. And if there's no further interventions, we'll begin. Any comments, any further comments on what I've said? Okay. All right. So we'll pick up where we left off. That's Article 24, rather. We were at BQ at page 131 of our package. Do you move that motion, sir? Yes. We're going to replace or add, given that these are expenses in the provincial field of jurisdiction, Québécois anyway, I think the minimum would be to respect the Charter of French language in Quebec. So we have to respect the jurisdiction of the provinces and territories, and we would like to add that the Charter of French language in Quebec. Okay, comment, response, we'll vote.
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin.
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono.
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga.
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson.
Pas pour.
Monsieur Godin.
Contre.
Monsieur Gould. Monsieur Généreux.
Contre.
Monsieur Lehoux. Monsieur Beaulieu. Et Madame Ashton.
Contre.
Donc, Monsieur Sanson, vous avez dit quoi?
J'ai dit contre, mais c'est...
Well, I said, okay, I didn't hear you. Not for. Opposed, in other words. an Acadian expression. We just flip it. 10 against, 1 for, rejected. Thank you. 48, for those who are BQ 48, it's a matter of lines. We had to inverse something. Mr. Pouli, go ahead. This is an amendment of the Quebec government proposed by, and it's very important. I find it regrettable that on the one hand, the Liberals are going to vote systematically against us in contravention of the Quebec jurisdiction. We're trying to look for something positive here. And they're ready to finance Anglophone groups to interfere, in fact, or get involved at least, with that issue in Quebec. They want to ensure, of course, English language services above and beyond what is actually required in the province. And it will be the Anglicization of Quebec. We're looking to respect for these measures taken by Quebec to protect French. Québécois are a nation, and we have as an identifying mark, of course, is our language. That is central to our identity. And it is, in fact, Quebec jurisdiction, constitutionally speaking. So what we're trying to add here, or correct if you were, point 2 says, given that the respect of provincial territorial jurisdiction, we would like to implement this part on Quebec territory unconditionally by way of a framework agreement between Quebec and the federal government respecting the specificity of Quebec. Now, those who are allergic to the chart will use the specificity of Quebec, the unique character. So that is my motivation, and that is my rationale for this motion, this amendment. You respect autodetermination by Quebec? Well, we can confirm it here and now. Thank you very much, Beaulieu. The importance of cooperating with the governments of provinces and territories, the amendment calls for, and this is quite important, to ensure the implementation conditional on the establishment of a framework agreement between the federal government and Quebec, which is a new concept in this bill, a new concept as adopted by the House in the second reading. So by custom and we read an amendment to a bill sent to a committee after second reading is not receivable. For mentions mentioned before, this would amend the substance of the amendment. Well, I will challenge your decision, Mr. Chair. I don't see that it's not seen. It's unforeseeable. This is very much in keeping and consonant with other motions that we have prepared, so I don't see why this one should be the exception to the rule. And, it's not acceptable, no, not receivable, out of order. Well, Mr. Godin, go ahead. Well, I'd like to invoke the orders. Why didn't you interrupt him before he made his intervention? We could have saved some time. Well, because we have to table the motion. We have to introduce it in order to vote on it. Well, if we can gain a little bit of time, I mean, he wasted a lot of time there. You made him. No. I'm trying to explain why it's not in order. You know, we can't decide after the fact if it's receivable or not. But when you knew that it was out of order, so why didn't you just tell him so? We have to know what I'm rejecting. I want everyone to know what the grounds were for it being out of order. If I would have said no, it's out of order before he even presented it. Well, debatable. It's at your discretion, Mr. Chair. Well, that's why I'm the chair. Mr. Beaulieu, you have every right to challenge the decision of the chair. That is not a debatable challenge, so we will vote either to sustain or not my decision. Okay, so we shall sustain and support the decision of the chair. We are voting.
Pour.
Madame Kayabaga,
Pour.
Monsieur Sanson,
D'accord.
Monsieur Godin,
Pour.
Monsieur Gould, Monsieur Généreux,
Oui.
Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu,
Contre.
Madame Ashton.
Pour.
C'est ça.
Donc 10 pour.
10-4, 1 against. The decision is sustained. Article 24, would it be accepted as amended? Well, it hasn't been amended. So, Article 24, carried? Not carried? Okay, if you apply the last vote, that will be it. 10-4, 1 against. Article 25, CPC 41. Mr. Godin. No comment on it. Okay. If CPC is carried, Lib 27, NPD 11, Lib 28, NDP 12, BQ 50, and Lib 30 would be moot. So if 41 carries, Lib 27, NDP 12, BQ 50, and Lib 30 cannot be proposed. They drop off the paper. Okay, we can vote on that then. It's understood.
Ah, ok, mais je vous suivais, là, moi, là. Allez-y, je vous suivais, là. On a demandé le vote, mais.
Well, we called the vote, but we'll hold it. We'll suspend that vote for a minute there. Okay? Fine. Thank you, Chair. Carry on. You good with that? All right, we can proceed with the vote. No, I have a comment, please, an intervention. Sorry. In fact, Mr. Chair, CPC 51 is very important to us because it adds to the bill a bit of strength, more teeth, and which would allow us to confirm what has been done by CPC 7 vis-à-vis the Treasury Board, the central agency. So, Mr. Chairman, if we want to be consistent, all parties should in fact accept this amendment. It represents, and do you want me to read it, sir? It's pretty long. I was going to just summarize it, but given that we don't have much time. It represents, Mr. Chair, if we accept this amendment, that Treasury Board Secretariat will be responsible for the entirety of having conformity to the bill in attaining the outcomes or the results of this bill. So we have to be consistent in our work and ensure that CPC 41 be accepted. This is a very major amendment which reconfirms what all the minority organizations in Canada have requested of the federal government. One boss, one central coordinating authority. Right now there's 4 or 5 departments which are involved. There's Heritage, there's Treasury Board President, Department of Justice, and Immigration. We want to meld and aggregate all of that and have one authority speaking on behalf of the others, of course. They have their word to say. But in order to ensure proper prudence, diligence, and vigilance, Treasury Board Secretariat becomes the responsible authority and would be held accountable for the application and respect of the bill. So I believe once the bill is adopted, we will have that, but it would like to see it centralized. Everybody that has supported BPC 7 goes in the same direction. We don't want to weaken the bill. We want to strengthen it. We don't want to put a stick in the spokes to the procedural aspects of the bill and give Treasury Board Secretary a hard time. I have a question perhaps I could address to Madame Boyer, if you will allow me, Mr. Chairman. Who will assure that immigration in 44.1 will be implemented and enforced? Just an example. I could have taken another department if you wish, but, well, thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. When a minister has a responsibility to, by law, it's the named minister that is responsible. So it would be the Minister of Immigration, and on behalf of the minister of well, what if within the timelines prescribed, well, who's going to be held responsible? Parliament, the government in general? There is an Official Languages Act in Canada, and it must be respected. Well, I think I'll give the floor to Mr. Newman. There are some principles involved here which would apply to all institutions, parliamentary institutions, and among those principles is that of the separation of powers. We cannot delegate to Treasury Board Part 1 and Part 2. This is a responsibility of Parliament, the House of Commons. The administration of justice, for example, belongs to justice. Another principle is of clear lines of authority. We are imputable to the House of Commons, Parliament. There are mechanisms for oversight in the law, and on behalf of policy, from the aspect of we obviously respect out of hand the responsibility and the good faith of all the ministers involved. Yes, I'm clear on what you're saying, Mr. Newman, but if we're here today on a new bill, exactly, we want to see the intent, and the intent, of course, is good governance, good government. The decline of French continues in Quebec. Many departments in the past have been less than diligent in applying and enforcing these Official Languages Act, and now we want to make sure that they do comply and that they get results. So we need one voice, one authority that would compel, as it were, the various departments. There are three possibilities, I believe. Privy Council could step down and do it, Department of Finance, and Treasury Board. Now, to my understanding, these are the three central agencies that can oblige departments, department heads, ministers, to get the results, to ensure that they take the necessary steps required to achieve these results. This is why we're here today. That what's on right now doesn't work. History has proven that this has not worked in the past. So this is why we want to put more teeth to the bill, because it didn't work in the past. So what tool, what mechanism, Mr. Newman? That's a question if you wish. What would allow a guarantee of results to the Prime Minister or PCO and Parliament? Well, my colleagues here at the table, I'd like to say that when you invoked that we're going to change the 82 Act. Part and parcel of that work was to establish the roles and responsibilities of the various interveners and departments, including Heritage and those who are in fact responsible for the implementation and the effective implementation of the Act. But, there's a cabinet. The ministers are part of the cabinet, and they are accountable as well. If there's any questions in the House, it gets worked out there. We can't necessarily saddle the entirety of this. We have a parliamentary system of government. Everyone assumes their responsibilities. Thank you very much, Mr. Newman. I'd like to give you the floor, Mr. Sadie.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. So after a certain point, I think when we're talking about separation of power, and Mr. Newman tried to explain that a little bit, when you look at the defined roles and we get into amendments 27, 28, 30, and other amendments later that will try to clarify the roles that Mr. Gaudin was talking about. But Madame Voyer, because Mr. Newman talked about some elements here, but if CPC 41 were adopted, could you explain to us the impact that that would have when we're talking about official languages and the Official Languages Act? Because there is the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages, there's the Parliament of Canada, the courts also. So when we look at the role of the Treasury Board, I think it's important. We all have the same objectives, but when we look at the government machinery, can you explain these components and the role that the Treasury Board has? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your question. So when we look at Amendment CPC 41, here it says that the Treasury Board would be responsible for federal fields of application, including the government strategy on official languages. I would remind you that this was a role that was given earlier in the bill to the Minister of Canadian Heritage. So when we're talking about consistency, it might be inconsistent with what the committee already adopted, yes. When we talk about the amendment here, it says that the federal programs of application, including the government strategy on official languages, this role was given by this committee, Lang, to Canadian Heritage earlier in the bill. So when we talk about coherence, it could be some inconsistency because this role was already given to the Minister of Canadian Heritage earlier in the bill. The other thing that this amendment proposes doing is that the Treasury Board would be, in the framework of this, would recommend regulatory measures to apply this bill. When we talk about this bill without distinguishing its parts, we assume that regulatory measures would be for all parts of the Act. And I would like to remind you that with the separation of powers in our parliamentary system, parts 1 and 2 said that the Treasury Board could tell parliamentarians what to do. And normally, the public service never tells parliamentarians what to do. There is also the issue of the courts. So the Treasury Board could tell the courts what to do. That's problematic in Part 3. And then there's also an agent of Parliament, and their role will be discussed in Part 9. And then there's the Treasury Board that could put regulations on official languages. And so it's very broad, but if parliamentarians wish to be told what to do by Treasury Board, then you could do so. Thank you. Mr. Gaudin, did you want to come back to that? Well, I would like to make 2 comments. One in response to Mr. Newman. I understand that you said that it could be discussed at the Council of Ministers. But when we're talking about a bill, I think we need to minimize the interpretation and the intention of individuals. The intention should be reflected in the Act, and I think that putting that to the discretion of the Council of Ministers is exactly what we don't want. And the Council of Ministers last week didn't necessarily do its work in the last 52 years, because we see that there is a certain situation that exists in official languages, and that's why I wanted to make that comment. What I understand, Madame Voyer, and I understand your comments, I think they're legitimate. Well, we are legislators, but we are not specialists in the application of the Act. If I've understood correctly, what is proposed is interesting, but it would need to exclude the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages, Parliament, and other levels, and the courts, and it would be admissible. That is my question, Ms. Voyer. Oh, well, I'm in competition. Thank you. You're very proactive. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will continue. Yes, effectively, based on the decision of committee members, you could choose which parts the Treasury Board would issue regulations on, but I would just add there's part of the Treasury Board's mandate, so I will give the floor to my colleague from Treasury Board. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. One thing that I would mention, my colleague, Madame Voyer, cleverly targeted the legislation of powers. Within the Treasury Board, it's really parts 4, 5, and 6 that we are responsible for. And if I could add something, it's that this amendment concerning the broadening of the scope of the Treasury Board's powers, concretely, that would mean that the powers to recommend regulations and develop policies and directives. There's also to monitor, to check compliance of federal legislation, but also to assess the effectiveness of programs to apply the Act. And at the end of the day, that would mean that the Treasury Board would have to establish policies and directives, but also monitor them. So I'll stop there for now, Mr. Chair. Mr. Adam, you mentioned that the Treasury Board is responsible for parts 4, 5, and 6, but we could add tasks to it. Parliamentarians can add tasks and sections and obligations to the Treasury Board, could it not? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Bill C-13 adds additional tasks under Part 7, including linguistic clauses and positive measures. Mr. Adam, if other responsibilities are added, the Treasury Board will do them, will it not, in the new bill with these amendments? Because the way that you presented it is that you are holding yourself back to parts 4, 5, and 6, and you say, well, a part of 7 in this current bill, but what I'd like to hear from you is the fact that if we, the committee, decide that we want to table a bill that is broader for the Treasury Board's responsibilities, the Treasury Board will comply. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will comply with what the committee decides, but it must be in compliance with the Treasury Board Act. Any other questions? I call on my colleagues to vote in support of this amendment because it would allow us. If there are suggestions for amendments, I am open to them. Because, Madame Voyer, you said, and you raised a legitimate point, you said we could exclude the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages and parliamentarians, but in its whole, I think this amendment is important. I see no other additional interventions around the table, so we will move to a vote. Madam Clerk.
Monsieur Seri?
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin?
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono?
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga?
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson?
Contre.
Monsieur Godin?
Pour.
Monsieur Gould? Monsieur Généreux?
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux?
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu?
Abstention.
Et Madame Ashton?
Contre.
Donc, je vois 6.
I see 6 in 6 against, 4 in favor. The amendment is rejected. That brings us to Lib 27. Mr. City. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lib 27 here is quite simple. I'll just read it and then we can debate it. It says that Bill C-13 in Clause 25 be amended by replacing lines 26 and 27 on page 16 with the following. Implementation of parts 4, 5, and 6, subsection 41.5, and paragraph 41.7a1 in all federal institutions other than the Senate. So thank you, Mr. Serre. Before we hear any comments, just note that if Lib 7 is adopted, NDP 11 cannot because of conflict of lines. Are there any comments on Lib 27? Yes, Mr. Gaudin. Yes, Mr. Chair. I am open to what my colleague just proposed. We can CPC 41, but it does broaden the scope. I would have a sub-amendment to propose, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Gaudin, I just received the sub-amendment. It is currently being circulated. So we will suspend briefly so we can read your sub-amendment. to Lib 27. Mr. Godin, go ahead. Go ahead. Well, Mr. Chair, we had a discussion with the law clerks. It's a good thing they're there. But my sub-amendment, I think, is admissible. I hope you'll be receptive to it, but it is receivable. What I'm trying to do, and I'll be very open about this, there is CPC 41, and that was not carried. I want to be a good player and try to find common ground for strengthening the bill and give the Act tools so that the departments have the necessary tools to obtain the best results, not for them, but under the Act, and that they have the tools to take action and make the necessary measures. So what I'm moving, and I will read, that Amendment Lib 27, proposing to amend Clause 25 at page 16 of Bill C-16, be amended by substituting open parentheses, subsection 41.5 and paragraph 41.7a1 by the following. I want to include all of Part 7 except, and I'll be a good player, I don't want people to say, well, it's written for Canadian heritage, it's for immigration, except sections 43 and 44.1. 43 concerns Canadian heritage and 44.1 concerns immigration. So I think, Mr. Chair, that this is a good opportunity to demonstrate that we are able to work together. Once again, I'm doing chronology. There's what was stronger. CPC 47. Liberals tabled Lib 27, which is less strong, but is stronger than the Act. I want to strengthen Lib 27 by including all of Part 7. So I can't go farther in my argument. I think that it's logical, and I hope my colleagues will support this sub-amendment. You refer to CPC 47, but it's actually CPC 41. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any questions around the table or online? I see no raised hands. Madam Clerk, a vote, please.
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin,
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono,
J'ai vu contre, mais j'ai pas entendu.
ouais. Monsieur Iacono, oui, contre. OK, c'est clair, ça. Madame Kayabaga,
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson,
Contre.
Monsieur Godin,
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde, Monsieur Généreux,
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu, Madame Ashton.
Contre.
Donc 6 contre,
6 against, 4 in favor. Sub-amendment to Lib 27 is rejected. Let's return to Lib 27. So I'll just say I will present a second sub-amendment to after Mr. Généreux. I think it was distributed. Yes. I will read it, that the amendment Lib 27 be amended at page 16 with the following, with substitution of the paragraph 41 and sub-paragraph by what follows, and of section 41. So I'll just explain what that means exactly. So we're listening, Mr. Godin. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Je vais prendre le bâton puis je vais essayer d'aller scorer. Monsieur le Président, merci Bernard. En fait, ça va dans le même sens que depuis le début de CPC 41. Là, plus fort, dents de sagesse, palette, puis là on est rendu avec les dents de lait. Maintenant, des dents de lait, c'est peut-être mieux que pas avoir de dents pantoute. Alors, c'est plus dans ce sens-là qu'on propose ces sous-amendements-là. Il va y avoir les dentiers tantôt, mais ça, je laisserai d'autres personnes prendre la parole autour de cette table. Maintenant, avec la collaboration du NPD. Alors, écoutez, Monsieur le Président, on ne s'éternisera pas, là.
Parfait.
Moi, je pense que c'est une belle occasion pour ménager la chèvre et le chou et de mettre des outils supplémentaires pour que les fonctionnaires soient encore plus efficaces.
Question autour de la table ou en virtuel? Oh, les gens virtuels, on m'avise que vous n'avez pas encore reçu le document, c'est-à-dire le sous-amendement à LIB 27. Je vais attendre. Faites-moi signe quand vous l'avez, là. Je vais suspendre momentanément.
Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président.
Drouin. Monsieur Iacono.
Pour.
Madame Kayabaga.
Pour.
Monsieur Sanson.
En faveur.
Monsieur Godin.
J'aurais aimé qu'il y ait plus de mordants, mais je vais voter pour.
Monsieur Gourde.
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux.
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux.
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu. Madame Ashton.
Pour.
Donc, LIB 27 adopté à l'unanimité. Maintenant, on passe à LDP 11. Page 138 de notre liasse de documents. Madame Ashton, allez-y. Pardon, Madame Ashton, je vous ai mis un peu dans l'eau chaude. Malheureusement, j'avais prévenu que si LIB 27 était adopté, que ça éliminait NDP 11. Désolé. Ça nous amène donc à LIB 28, pardon. Alors, LIB 28, je passerai la parole à M. Drouin.
Donc, juste pour le lire ici, pour ceux qui nous écoutent, comme vous aimez ça dire, Monsieur le Président, que le projet de loi C13 à l'article 25 soit modifié par substitution aux lignes 38 à 42, page 16 de ce qui suit, abrogé, B, par substitution aux lignes 3 à 8, page 17 de ce qui suit, numéro 3, le Conseil du Trésor doit, dans le cadre de cette mission. Donc, pour simplifier, ce que ça veut dire, vous allez
The obligation then the Treasury Board has to, in its functions, we change it for number 3 because we have eliminated the previous one. Well, thank you. If Lib 28 is carried, NDP 12, BQ 50 will be removed because of conflict. So go ahead, please. Thank you, Chair. We agree in principle with this one, but given that we have privileged information, NDP 12 is stronger in our opinion, and I will going to vote the NPD 12, but I would reject this one. Okay, any other interventions, either at the table or in cyberspace? Voting now?
Adopté. Donc, comme je disais précédemment, si les 28 est adopté,
As I said previously, NDP 12 is now dropped. As with BP 50. So we're coming back to Lib 30. Mr. Serré. Thank you very much, Chair. No, in Article 25, together with 30, I'd like to read the motion here that Bill C-13 in Clause 25 be amended. A, replacing line 16 on page 17 with the following. Subsection 41.5 and paragraph 41, sub 7, sub A1, as follows, by replacing line 31 on page 17 with the following. Programs that give effect to subsection 41.5 and paragraph 7A1. And the instructions provided by this paragraph. In other words, giving effect to subsection 41.5, paragraph 41, 7A1. Mr. Beaulieu, well, perhaps you might explain the intent behind this, please. We're looking to clarify the roles. There's a series of amendments that we had discussed before in Lib 27, 28. We want to clarify responsibilities unless Madame Boyer has something to add.
Ça me ferait plaisir, Monsieur le Président.
It'd be my pleasure, Mr. Chairman. The amendment proposed by Liberals, Lib 30, if there's the Governing Council can provide guidelines for the implementation of the two parts that we are talking about here, or the consideration of linguistic articles in federal provincial agreements in a positive manner. It also obliges Treasury Board Secretariat to provide information and advice on this, provide that to their employees, etc. Thank you, Madame Boyer. Is that clear enough, Mr. Boyer? Will provincial governments be consulted on that, or have they been consulted on this? I don't know if that's particular pertinence right now, but go ahead, Madame William. Oh, or rather, your colleague. Well, we have to contextualize there. We're in Part 8 of the law here, and this is of concern to Treasury Board. And in that context, we're talking about the machinery of government federally. There's no involvement at this point with provincial or territorial jurisdictions. Oh, thank you, Chair. I would add that this amendment would perhaps adjust the Treasury Board responsibilities, such as adjusting regulations or guidelines, and inform federal employees of the implementation of these official languages criteria. And of course, to be included if ever there are agreements, framework agreements with provinces or territories. Okay, Mr. Godin, that's a brief comment. Always in the overall picture that I brought earlier, and I see a tooth budding in the jaw here, so we are getting better. Okay, we'll go to the vote.
Monsieur Drouin,
Pour.
Monsieur Iacono, Monsieur Iacono,
Ça veut dire pour, ça, le signe de tête, M. Iacono?
Oui,
Vous êtes en sourdine, c'est pour ça, là.
OK.
You were in mute, so I guess you were nodding your head yes? Okay, sorry, yes.
Pour.
Monsieur Sanson,
En faveur.
Monsieur Godin,
Comme un bon dentiste, je vais voter pour.
Monsieur Gourde, Monsieur Généreux,
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu, et Madame Ashton.
Pour.
On va avoir les moyens.
Donc, merci. Lib 30 adopté.
Adopted unanimously. Now let's go to 31, Lib 31. Oh, just a moment. Is the clause 25 carried as modified, amended? Yes. Okay. Good. Unanimously, Madam Clerk. Lib 31, Mr. Drouin. Earlier, in my amendment, I proposed Article 3 to be amended. Treasury Board involved here. So this is a reference to that. That bill be amended in Clause 25, 41C. Currently, it says 4C, but 4 no longer there, so it's Mr. Godin. Your comment is valid, but I don't think we need an amendment for that. All bills are going to be revised by reference, and it will be automatically renumbered, if you were, as it were. The legal clerk, legislative clerk, will correct any typos or minor. May we get his input? Well, I forgot to explain that if Lib 31 is carried. Is it 31? Yes, it is 31. All right. Just let me check here.
Bon, je reviens. On reprend, monsieur.
Coming back to it, Mr. Godin, you want to ask a question of Ms. Tibial? No, well, I only want to confirm that you went through the entire bill and that it will be corrected if there's any numbering or other minor issues. Are you going to revise the entire bill or version of it from top to bottom? Well, legislative clerk, we only look at the amendments, and before printing, of course, there is quite a task in hand, and it's in fact the drafters and the legislative experts to ensure that everything is numbered properly, that there's no typos, mistakes, but there's a limit to the corrections that if it's renumbering, that's no problem. But to add references, I'm not sure that we can be done because it's Article 56 of the regulations. So all corrections will be made. Okay, so we have to understand the entire process. Thank you. No further interventions, so Madam Clerk, Lib 31.
Pour.
Monsieur Drouin?
Pour.
Monsieur Iacono?
Pour.
Madame Kayabaga?
Pour.
Monsieur Sanson?
Pour.
Monsieur Godin?
Pour.
Monsieur Gould?
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux?
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux?
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu?
Pour.
Madame Ashton?
Pour.
Donc, Lib 31, adopté.
Carried unanimously. Article 26, is it carried? As amended, of course? Carried, thank you. Article 27. Acceptable? Carried? Yes? Thank you. No amendments were presented for Article 27. I see C13 here. Well, I have an amendment, CPC 42, which talks about 27.1. This is why I've been following. I forgot that point 1. Okay, we were only point 1 off, I guess. So, new article, 27.1. 27, carried, first of all? Yes, okay, now. New article, 27.1. So that'd be CPC 41. I was just joking, never mind. I'd like to table CPC 42 as follows. It would be 52. The commissioner may engage on a temporary basis the services of persons having technical or specialized knowledge of any matter relating to the work and advise and assist, etc., and fix pay, remuneration, and expenses of those persons. So it's obvious the commissioner can use the resources that he have to do the job properly. So it's an extra tool under his control. That's all I have to say. I just want to suspend for one moment, check something.
Admissible. So CPC 42.1 41. Any questions? No, I see none around the table. So we'll move to a vote, Madam Clerk, on CPC 42.
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin,
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono,
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga,
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson,
Contre.
Monsieur Godin,
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde, Monsieur Généreux,
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu, Madame Ashton.
Contre.
Donc, 6 contre.
6 against, 5 in favor. The motion is struck. So there's no new clause 27.1 is shall clause 28 carry. New clause 28.1. You're good. CPC 43. Mr. Godin, you have the floor. Well, Mr. Chair, once again, the principle is to give more tools to all stakeholders who can advance the cause. But I understand that CPC 41 was not adopted. I will try again to better equip the Commissioner. That Bill C-13 be amended by adding, after line 18 on page 18, the following new clause, 28.1, subsection 56.1 of the Act is replaced by the following. 56.1, it is the duty of the Commissioner to take all actions and measures within the authority of the Commissioner with a view to ensuring recognition of the status of each of the official languages and compliance with the spirit and intent of this Act in the administration of the affairs of federal institutions, including any of their activities relating to the advancement of English and French in Canadian society, consistent with federal, provincial, and territorial measures to promote and protect the French language. I don't want to be redundant. I have no additional comments to make about equipping the Commissioner. Okay. So I'd like to draw your attention. One moment, Mr. Beaulieu. I would like to draw members' attention to the fact that CPC 43, which we just spoke about, and BQ 51, Mr. Beaulieu's amendment deal with this, are nearly identical, except for their wording. Questions and comments on CPC 43? I'm listening to you, Mr. Beaulieu. Please go ahead. I support this position. And what it adds as well is that it takes into account the promotion and protection of French, and it spells out that its goal is to promote and protect French, so it adds that element so that the Commissioner can take it into consideration. Any other comments? I see none. Madam Clerk, a vote, please.
Berry,
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin,
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono,
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga,
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson,
Contre.
Monsieur Godin,
J'essaie de voir la différence.
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde, Monsieur Généreux,
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu,
Oh.
Madame Ashton.
Contre.
Donc, 6 contre.
6 against, 5 for. CPC 43 is rejected. And now we will move on to BQ 51, which is nearly identical. So you can table your amendment, Mr. Beaulieu. I will propose it nevertheless, and while referring to the importance of taking into consideration the objective of promoting and protecting French. Thank you. Any comments? Mr. Godin. Mr. Chair, I would like you to know that I will be supporting my colleague's amendment, but I would like us to reflect on the fact that the Minister said that in C-13 she was giving additional tools to the Commissioner. And if we have the opportunity to add more tools to make the Commissioner even more effective, why would we not do so in C-13? It's a simple comment, I would invite our friends across the way and my colleague from the NDP to reflect on the matter. Thank you for the comment, Mr. Godin. Are there any other comments or questions or any interventions on BQ 51? I see no hands raised, so I would ask for a vote, Madam Clerk.
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin,
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono,
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga,
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson,
Contre.
Monsieur Godin,
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde, Monsieur Généreux,
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu, Madame Ashton.
Contre.
6 contre.
6 against, 5 in favor, so BQ 51 is struck down. So new clause 28.1 was voted down. Shall clause 21 carry? Yes. Carried. Shall clause 30 carry? Carried. Clause 31. BQ 53. Is the amendment moved? Mr. Beaulieu. It comes after. BQ 53 is not being moved. BQ 52, Mr. Beaulieu, is this moved? Not. No, it is not. And not 54 either. Shall clause 31 carry? Yes, carried. Shall clause 32 carry? Carried. Clause 33, BQ 54. Is it moved, Mr. Beaulieu? Inaudible for the interpreter. BQ 54 and 55 are not moved.
J'ai été trop vite.
Okay, I'm here.
Oui. L'article 34.
Shall clause 34 carry? Yes, carried. Shall clause 35 carry as well? Carried. Clause 36. Clause 36. I can take a ribbing. Clause 36. New NDP 13. Is it moved? Yes. Before we get into the debate on new NDP 13, I'd just like to say that if it is carried, CPC 44, Lib 33, CPC 45 cannot be carried because of a conflict of lines. And if new NDP 13 is carried, Lib 34 cannot be moved because its wording is found in the same in NDP 13. I'll repeat myself. If new NDP 13 is carried, CPC 44, Lib 33, CPC 45 cannot be carried. And furthermore, Lib 34 cannot be moved because its wording is included in new NDP 13. Madame Ashton, you have the floor. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am moving new NDP 13 in the spirit of giving more power and strengthening the important work by the Commissioner of Official Languages. And we hope to support them. I hope to have the support of all committee members. And also, because I want us to move forward effectively, I will keep my comments brief so that we can move to a vote. Thank you. Any comments? Mr. Godin, you have the floor. I appreciate the words by my NDP colleague to say that we will have a stronger act. I think, Mr. Chair, for the benefit of people who are listening at home, I would like to give a chronology, is that there are amendments tabled by the Liberals since December. There have been CPC and March 21st, the NDP, and it was mentioned that the wording of Lib 34 was integrated into the amendment by NDP 13. It shows to me that there is a coalition between the Liberals and the NDP. I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Godin. I have the floor, Mr. Godin. You are not to make comments on, if you're not going to make comments on new NDP 13, your conclusions, your comments about are irrelevant to NDP 13. It has no relevance either for the public or C13. I understand that you're making a political analysis, but if you wish the floor, it needs to be on new NDP 13. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I wanted to table a sub-amendment to NDP 13 that you have to give more tools to the Commissioner, as my colleague mentioned. And it is with this objective that we table a sub-amendment to a new NDP 13. I will read it as it is being distributed. That amendment NDP 13, proposing to amend Clause 36 at pages 22 to 24 of Bill C-13, be amended. A. By substituting under Part 4 or 5 of Paragraph A by the following. Under Part 4, 5, or 7. B. By substituting under Part 4 or 5 or subsection 41, 7, or 10 of Paragraph B by the following. Under Part 4, 5, or 7. And that goes along the same lines as what my colleague tabled, which means giving more tools to the Commissioner of Official Languages. So, Mr. Chair, we will just have a bit of time. We'll take a bit of time to circulate the sub-amendment. I have done a proper introduction of this, so I think I can wrap up now. But the document is just being distributed so that everyone can read it. I don't know whether those sitting remotely can have seen it. So this is the change that I'm proposing. Yes. In Part 7. Has everyone received the document? Any questions or comments on the matter? Around the table or online? I would ask for a vote, Madam Clerk, on the sub-amendment proposed by Mr. Godin to NDP 13.
Monsieur Drouin?
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono?
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga?
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson?
Contre.
Monsieur Monsieur Godin?
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde? Pour. Monsieur Généreux?
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux?
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu? Pour. Madame Ashton?
Contre.
Donc, 6
against, 5 in favor. Sub-amendment rejected. So we'll come back to a new NDP 13. Any comments? I see no raised hands. So we will proceed with a vote, Madam Clerk.
Pour.
Monsieur Drouin?
En faveur.
Monsieur Iacono?
Pour.
Madame Kayabaga?
En faveur.
Monsieur Sanson?
D'accord.
Monsieur Godin?
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde?
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux?
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux?
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu? Pour. Madame Ashton?
Pour.
donc adopté à l'unanimité.
Carried unanimously.
Donc, CPC 44,
So CPC 44, Lib 33, CPC 45 cannot be adopted, and Lib 34. Is that right?
donc l'adoption du nouveau
The adoption of new NDP 13 nullifies CPC 44, Lib 33, CPC 45, and Lib 34. Shall Clause 36 carry as amended? Carried. Clause 37, CPC 46. Mr. Godin, you have the floor. Is it moved? Yes. Mr. Chair, once again, to be broader in scope, CPC 46 states that Bill C-13 in Clause 37 be amended by replacing line 26 on page 24 with the following. Designated body means a federal institution referred to in. Designated body in quotation marks. It's just a definition. Thank you, Mr. Godin. I remember what you said earlier about an amendment moved by the Bloc Québécois. I will say that Bill C-13 creates administrative sanctions that could apply to a designated body, which is defined as a crown corporation or a moral person, subject to the Official Languages Act, subject to or another federal legislation. CPC 46 seeks to broaden the definition of designated body to federal institutions, and could affect the use of It makes an amendment to a bill sent to committee if it exceeds the scope, and so the chair said that it broadens the definition of designated body and it exceeds the scope of the bill, and as adopted at second reading at the House of Commons, and therefore I declare this change inadmissible. And it is your right to contest the chair's decision. Time is playing against us. I will not contest your decision. Thank you. CPC 47. You have the floor, Mr. Godin. I will present it, and I have a question perhaps for Madame Voyer. I will invite the officials to weigh in. CPC 47, that Bill C-13 in Clause 37 be amended by replacing line 30 on page 24 to line 4 on page 25 with the following. 65.2, Section 65.3 to 65.95 apply to federal institutions that have duties under Part 4 or 5.
Before questions, you're moving, you've explained it, and in establishing administrative monetary penalties, the same arguments. Well, I'll dispense you from all of that. All I can say is that if you're going to say it's not in order, I'll accept that, and let's carry on. No, but you have to move it, otherwise we don't carry on. So I have to explain to you why we do or don't. So 48, are you moving 48? Would you like to gain some time? Yes, I would. I'm sorry, but it's out of order, not receivable. Well, I can read it really quickly if you like. It's only a line. That bill in Clause 27 be amended to line 6, page 25, with the following, with parts 4 and 5. Okay, well, let's go for CPC 49. Have you read it? Are you moving it? Well, with that grim look on your face, I'm not sure. I'm not a very good poker player. Let's go. Are you moving it? I'll move it. So, okay, but you're going to withdraw it, so, no fine. That's fine. Thank you. S- That would be Article 37 of the bill. Is Article 37 carried? Carried, thank you. BQ 56, Mr. Beaulieu. I was withdrawing it, thank you. Mr. Seri? Thank you. First, are you proposing it? Yes. No, not the same. I'm going to ask, are you presenting the motion? And if not, NDP 14 will be negated because it's identical. So go ahead with figure 15. Lib 35. Well, I think it was tabled one day before the NDP counterpart, so I don't know. Why are we dealing with that one? Why not the NDP? So, well, let me check with the technical rules here. Well, thank you for the question. If we take a look, it's not the date that it was tabled, but the date it was drafted. So, and sent to the clerk. And that's what we use as a benchmark. So Lib 35 was received to the clerk before NDP 14. So that's the only reason we're dealing with that one first. Matter of clarification. The date that you see just at the bottom of our amendments, that is the date of the drafting, the legal draft. And the legal draft, and it goes directly to the clerk? No, it goes back to the MP who submits or not to the clerk. And so what you see in that fine print at the bottom there, that's the last time that it was introduced into the system. Thank you. A lot of technical points today. Mr. Seri, go ahead. Well, straightforward, Mr. Chairman. Lib 35 is linked to Lib 14. It adds a bit of detail. Bill 13 in Clause 38 be amended by replacing line 14 on page 31 with the following. And of the contravention or violation that resulted in the order being. So that was only to clarify. Okay, thank you. No comment. Interventions? Questions? Let's vote, Madam Clerk.
Pour.
Monsieur Iacono,
Pour.
Madame Kayabaga,
Pour.
Monsieur Sanson,
En faveur.
Monsieur Godin,
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde, Monsieur Généreux, Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu, et Madame Ashton.
Pour.
Donc, Lib 35 à l'unanimité.
Unanimously carried. So now Article 38 carried as amended. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Article 39 of the bill, is it carried? Carried. Now, CPC 50, are you moving it? Yes, I am. It's fairly long. Do you want me to read it? fairly lengthy. We'll read it. That to be modified to modify 64.1, actions taken to implement recommendations, and paragraphs 58, paragraph 5, within 6 months, and then the same paragraph would be followed if within the 6 months following the tabling of an application or complaint, under Section 1 in any time thereafter. That's under 63.3 of the recommendation of the Commissioner under subsection 64.2, and the decision under that can be done within the 6 months after the complaint is made. I don't think we'll try to rationalize that. People can understand or maybe they've already made up their minds. So, comments, questions? No? We'll go to the vote then, Madam Clerk, sorry.
En collaboration avec les partis conservateurs, on vote pour. Bon travail, M. Godin.
Monsieur Drouin,
En faveur.
Monsieur Iacono,
Faveur.
Madame Kayabaga,
Pour.
Monsieur Sanson,
Avec des arguments pointus comme cela, je dois être à faveur.
Monsieur Godin,
Je pense que je vais voter pour.
Monsieur Gould, Monsieur Généreux, Monsieur Lehoux, Monsieur Beaulieu, Madame Ashton.
Donc, j'interprète le papa pour un pour. Donc, adopté à l'unanimité, CPC.
Unanimously, that is Article 40, now amended. Is it carried? Carried. Article 41, carried? Carried. Article 42, carried? Carried. New Article 42.1, CPC creates these, so Monsieur Godin, CPC 51, you have the floor. Are you going to move it? Yes, I shall, but I don't know if that was quite apropos, because as chair, you're not the judge of our work. So if we're introducing any, well, it was a positive comment, mind you. No animosity, Mr. Chair, none at all. Yes, I would like to present this amendment that Bill 30 be amended by adding on page 32, for greater certainty in processing under the court may admit as evidence information relating to events that occurred after the complaint to the Commissioner was made, including information enabling an evaluation of whether the complaint is well-founded or whether the remedy to be granted in any appropriate. I think that's a very important addition. It's going to be much faster, less complicated, and it will allow Francophones lose a lot less time trying to get an adjudication. The FFCB, the work of volunteers and such, and CP 51 is accepted. This will allow us to fast-track and eliminate certain legal challenges and fights. This would be a gain for Francophones and a savings to the public taxpayer. Well, thank you very much. Any discussion here at the table or in cyberspace? We're going to vote then for this new Article 41.
Monsieur Drouin,
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono,
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga,
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson,
Contre.
Monsieur Godin,
Pour.
Monsieur Gould, Monsieur Généreux, Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu,
Pour.
Madame Ashton.
Contre.
6 contre, 5 pour.
6 opposed to 5-4. The amendment is rejected. Article 43, BQ 57. Do you suggest moving this one? Is it in order, sir? You want to amend it? No. But I will withdraw number 2. I haven't tabled it yet. Okay, I'm going to check with the experts here. To table taking out paragraph 2, is that correct? Is that correct? Is that your... Yes, in 41.1, there's point 1, there's point 2. We'd like to strike that. And also the reference in the English text. Well, coming back on 81.1, it will make a difference. So would you like to read it? Well, by adding after section 81, 81.1.1, for greater certainty, the implementation of this act shall be carried out in accordance with the jurisdiction and powers of the provinces and territories, including the Charter of the French language in Quebec. The second paragraph or subparagraph is being struck, and we understand that English and French are both of use in Quebec. Thank you. Around the table, any comment? No questions. We are going to vote, Madam Chair.
Signe de tête de oui.
Monsieur Iacono?
Monsieur Iacono, on vous entend pas.
Mr. Iacono, you can't just nod. You have to speak. For or against? Against.
Okay. Monsieur Sanson? OK, there you go. Ça, c'était clair. OK, contre. Voilà. Monsieur Sanson?
Contre.
Monsieur Godin?
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde?
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux?
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux?
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu?
Pour.
Madame Ashton?
Contre. Point d'ordre, Madame la greffière.
Allez-y, Madame Kayabaga.
Madam Clerk? I think I was overlooked. No. I took you before Mr. Iacono, but I have you recorded as a no. We heard you clearly, so. Mr. Iacono? I keep pressing on these little buttons there. This is why I'm often in mute or I get cut off. I'm cutting myself off. No, but we understood you were against, so 6 against, 5-4, rejected. Is Article Clause 43 adopted? Yes. 44, Clause 44. CPC 52. Are you moving it, Mr. Godin? Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. So I'd like to tell you that if CPC is carried, maybe 58 cannot because of a conflict of the lines. Go ahead. CPC 52. Should consult members of English and French language minority communities at the time in a timely fashion in a manner appropriate to the circumstances, and then, if appropriate, but it's continued on the next line. Okay. Around the table? No? We vote.
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin?
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono?
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga?
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson?
Contre.
Monsieur Godin?
Pour.
Monsieur Gourde? Monsieur Généreux?
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux?
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu? Madame Ashton?
Contre.
Pardon, j'ai pas compris, excuse-moi.
Madame Ashton?
Contre? OK.
Contre?
Oui, contre.
OK, donc 6 contre, 5 pour.
6 against, 5-4, rejected. BQ 58 now? Are you moving it? Yes. Please proceed. There has to be some consultation with the provincial and territorial governments, and The proposal carries on. It's to ensure that there is consultation and appropriate time and in a manner appropriate to circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. Around the table, virtually, we'll vote. Madam Chair.
Contre.
Monsieur Drouin,
Contre.
Monsieur Iacono,
Contre.
Madame Kayabaga,
Contre.
Monsieur Sanson, Monsieur Godin,
Pour Madame la greffière.
Monsieur Gourde,
Pour.
Monsieur Généreux,
Pour.
Monsieur Lehoux,
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu,
Pour.
Madame Ashton.
Contre.
Donc, 6 contre.
6 against, 5 in favor. BQ 58 is rejected. Is clause 44 carried? Yes, thank you. Is clause 45 carried? Yes, thank you. Clause 46 carried. Clause 47 carried. Clause 48 carried. Now, CPC 53, are you going to move it? Do you have a comment to make in advance? Well, I'll go quickly. Page 37, what follows, 91.1, the Government of Canada or any other authority exercised any other authority who acting on behalf of the Government of Canada or a sovereign state has to understand clearly both official languages at the time of appointment. So we have an example right now. We have a Governor General, very responsible person. She's bilingual, but it's one of those languages is not French. So I'd make sure in Bill C-13 that the Governor General has, as one of the criteria for appointment, know both official languages, which are English and French. When we say bilingual in Canada, it's English-French, because now we have an example, Governor General of who is bilingual but speaks English and Inuktitut. It's not retroactive. Obviously, this is for future application, so don't throw back at me that we're going to dismiss the Governor General. Not at all, not at all. We just want to make sure that we have the proper tools to demonstrate that even at the highest levels, the most significant positions in our country, we use and appoint people who speak both English and French. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to tell the members of that CPC 53, 54, and Lib 36 deal with essentially the same subject. Therefore, CPC 53, if Bill 13, changing the Language Act, does not apply to the Governor General of Canada. It would have to submit her or any other high designated individual who speaks on behalf of the sovereign the common practices on page 76 and the standing rules of the is not acceptable if your committee is of the opinion that to take this goes beyond the scope of this bill, and I declare the amendment out of order or not receivable. I have an amendment which might make it in order. Well, but it's too late to amend that. CPC 53 is not in order. Well, you can't react without knowing ahead of time. No, but CPC 53, you can propose another amendment, but not a sub-amendment. This one is done. Well, I'd like to propose an amendment then. Well, you can, but CPC 53 is out of order, not receivable. Well, I'd like to respond to your explanation and justification. I understand, but I have two questions. How can we, within this bill, impose language requirements on justices of the Supreme Court, but not on the Governor General? How could we possibly put it into legislation, any legislation? Well, perhaps our specialist can respond. Well, I'm going to have to go to our constitutionalist here, Mr. Newman. Well, it's a fairly straightforward question, in fact. As you know, there's been attempts in the past, legislative, to modify the Supreme Court of Canada Act in the nomination process, the appointment process. The Supreme Court recognized itself that it's part of the constitutional structure, division of powers, etc., in 2014. So we don't propose any amendments on the Supreme Court of Canada. The composition of the court is constitutionalized. It's Article 41 of our Constitution Act, 1982. In this approach, we hope to extend a provision which applies to all levels of federal court except for the Supreme Court of Canada. It will extend to the Supreme Court because it's an institutional, constitutional structure. The court has to act in such a way that judges hearing a case can comprehend and follow and hear the case without the use of interpretation. So this is an institutional practice. So this new obligation, or by extension, the obligation for what's there for other federal courts, that the Supreme Court, it's expected that in 2023 is in measure to deal with this directly in languages, which wasn't the case back in the day when we legislated bilingual capacity in other levels of federal court. So it's sorted out in the nomination process itself, the appointment. Now, the Governor General is actually appointed and inducted into her position by Her Highness, in this case, His Highness now, King Charles. And they're protected by Clause 41 of our Constitution. So it's very, very difficult for the Parliament to assume that authority to appoint a Governor General. That is not the prerogative of Parliament or of the Government of Canada. It is, in fact, technically stems from Clause 58 of our Constitutional Act. There's no possibility of imposing that on the GG. Okay, well, as I said, CPC 53 is out of order. I'm glad to hear the argument. It's nice to know where and why that comes from. Mr. Godin, well, I challenge your decision that it's not in order. Okay, well, then we will vote on whether you sustain my position or not. So that we sustain the decision of the chair.
Monsieur Iacono?
Oui.
C'est ça. Madame Kayabaga?
Oui.
Monsieur Sanson?
Oui.
Monsieur Godin?
Contre.
Monsieur Gourde?
Une chance de se débarrasser.
Monsieur Généreux? Monsieur Lehoux? Monsieur Beaulieu? Madame Ashton? Pour.
Donc, ma décision est menue.
Before we adjourn, my decision is maintained. I just say that earlier I said that if CPC 53 was moved, then CPC 54 and BQ Lib 36 So I declared CPC 53 inadmissible. So I'll let you guess what next things will. So we are adjourning. People who are joining remotely, please join us at least a few minutes early. And we are changing rooms for our afternoon session. We are moving to room 425. Adjourned.